Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I wrote this earlier this morning, like a couple hours ago. I first wrote it. It said, "What will be your legacy?" Then I changed it while I was here. We are a part of one living legacy of life, basically. We're all collected in harmony of everything, everyone. We're all connected. If we can't see it or not, we all come from one source, which is pure light, the omnipresent of all things, or as some would be initiated to into the mystery schools or into the hermetic arts or the metaphysical world. But I grabbed this book earlier when I got here. It's the Science of Mind, Philosophy of Faith, and the Way of Life by Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes was actually a deep philosopher, and he was part of a movement, a new age movement, which they call now, but it was something brand new in the beginning when they started it out. Because for one person to start to speak or to inspire, they have to get their inspiration from somebody, or somebody else has to teach them. About, I would say, 90 days ago or 4 months ago, I went to go see Les Brown at Unity Church in Detroit. He said that you have to have the will to do it. And you guys already know what you guys already know because it's inside of you what's inside of me. What's inside of everybody else is inside of you. It takes, I'll go into it a little bit longer, but I just want to read this real quick. The principle of governing faith is that when one praying becomes convinced that his prayer will automatically be answered, Jesus announced the law of mind, saying, "It is done unto you as you believe." The universe exists by its own self-pronunciation, by its own affirmation is only known as I am. One of the greatest words of the Bible was taught to Moses and Abrahamic and all that is, how would you know that Jesus was in front of you, or how would you relieve the people of Israel, or that he said that I am that I am? Because the words we put after that is what we convince ourselves to be. So if what I said earlier, this is we are part of one living legacy that is to bring light to the world or bring happiness to one's darkness, because we have to come from darkness to be able to enjoy the light. I wrote a quote earlier down. I'm going to read this quote to you. What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. What we have done for others and the world remains, and it's immortal. It's by Albert Pike. Albert Pike was very famous back in the day, and he was a grand sovereign commander of the 33rd degree of Masonry. But I'm not going to get into that, but I get a lot of inspiration from Albert Pike and Manning P. Hall and Ernest Holmes and all the deep philosophies of the world, because I have to be inspired, because this world will make you get confused of what your real mission in life is. I wrote this down also. It says, we all know of people that has passed on their living legacy. Like, we all know this, that we're going to pass on to somebody else what we learned to other people. It's how we want to be remembered. And like for some of us, all we know is negativity. All we know is the dark. And some of us need to find the way to the light. What Jesus did was he didn't preach to the most righteous people. He went out to the outskirts of the world, to the misfits, the murderers, the prostitutes, and all that, to bring them into light, for they can have an impact on the people that thought what was right, and they brought them into light. And I wrote on one of the greatest stories ever told to mankind was the birth and death of Jesus Christ. For some of us, we just know about his birth and we know about his death. But all we're going to be remembered for is the time we are born and the date we are dead, what day we pass away. And it's what's in between those dates that really matters to us, or it matters to me. It's how I can contribute to the world now. It's not how the world can contribute to me. I have looked into, like, I really wonder what his life was like when he was a teenager. Was he just like me? Was he a misfit? Was he a troublemaker? Was he full of drunkenness? Well, was he did all these crazy things? Because there's been stories that when he was a little kid that he had like a violent temper. There's some books out there like the Pizza Sophia. There's books for ages and ages, but we're not going to really know the part between that because he actually, I tried to figure out how he was taught because back in those old times there was these mystical schools that you had to be initiated into because the kings and queens at that time did not want you to learn how to write, or they didn't want you to be educated. They wanted to keep you enslaved. So this is one way that how people got educated, and they learned actually the seven little arts of life because it has a lot to do with my life, and it has a lot to do with me talking about Albert Pike. But like I said, I'm not really going to go into that very much right now. But I also wrote on the time we all have here, what would you like to be remembered for? Like for me, the other day I was at Tim Hortons and one of my mentors passed by and sent me a text. He goes, "I'm just want to text you just because I was in the neighborhood." Then I was coming out and I seen three people holding a sign. One I see on a regular basis is my mind got really sad. Like, how can I help these people? Why is it that there's an epidemic going on in society today, and that if we all believe in the one purpose and the one loving God, why is it that everybody, I can go countless cities and countless states, it's the same thing. There's people standing on the same street corners on every single day. I can relate to that because I was homeless, but I never holded a sign. I want to understand what's the mentality behind it, but that's a longer, deeper story. And there was a post on Facebook. Instead of having all these mega churches out here that have all these mega churches, why not a mega shelter? That made a lot of sense to me. Like all these abandoned buildings in the city of Pontiac, why can't we turn some of these into like homeless shelters or schools? Because a church, for me, what a church really is supposed to be an educational standpoint, a place where you get healing, and a place where you become well again. Because it's a mental, physical, and spiritual. Because to start to understand this stuff, you have to basically die of a spiritual death, and you have to be reborn of some new life. Because this world can get so confusing so much over time that we lose focus of our true mission. Because all through life and all through philosophy and all through religion, it's the same thing. It's just worded different for each nation. For me, that's what I see, and I'm trying to put the common thread into it because, like she said earlier, that how it's a new beginning. That actually what the word Genesis means is to begin. If you have to start to understand the words, because what she said, the words are magical. Because if we don't understand the meaning, how do we understand the root of the word? We have to look at the anthropology or the wording or how this word came into existence. Because it says in the beginning, "Let there be light," and there was light. And from light, out of darkness came light, and and they divided the two. And like from a mystical standpoint, from the way